Good morning, everyone. This presentation is for empowering young Black girls, education, skills, and purpose. And again, I want to say I am a African American woman, so this is not to just be, I guess, super specific to Black women or Black girls, but I love my own community. I love myself enough that this information is usually targeted to young Black people in my community. But if any other community crosses this information, you are more than welcome to take this and apply this to your life as well. Okay. So just to put that out there, but because of the direction and me as someone who just wants to provide value and provide assistance based on my experiences and things that I know, that's why usually some of my content will be specific for people in my community. But this information is to empower people in my community so that it continues to affect us positively in the United States and worldwide. But especially for the United States, since this is our country, we want to make sure that we are doing things that contribute to the overall vision for America, for Americans. Now, to the young girls listening, if you are in middle school, high school, or college, I want you to hear me clearly. Okay? Your future is not about chasing relationships or waiting for validation. I'm going to read that again. Your future is not about chasing relationships or waiting for validation. Society will try to push that on you, but your real power lies in education, skills, and leadership. This presentation is your guide to building a future on purpose. Okay? Now, you need to lead with knowledge. Most great leaders, whether they're male or female, it doesn't matter if they're a janitor working their own business, a woman with her own finance company, a leader of a military. These things all matter. That's why on my previous videos, I promote education, skills, and those skills and your education leads to better leadership, influence, and also the power that we would need for our community in order to continue to progress. Okay, so it really matters, and you lead with knowledge. I don't care who's telling you that education don't matter, your degrees don't matter. I'm just expressing to you, young ladies, that you have to understand your country, economics, political policies, you know, um, your money matters, how it's spent, your taxes. If someone is talking to you and they're focused on your relationship and trying to force you to be better there, um, you know, they're thinking in a world where people don't have rights. They're thinking in a world where people have to be dependent upon other people, right? But they may not have the knowledge or have done the research on the worlds that did exist where women did have leadership positions, so this is also to help you. Again, I'm not here to promote relationship information, but I know in my community that's been a thing for some reason. Even though Black women have excelled in the areas that we needed to excel that contribute to the greater society as far as education, skills, leadership, and power. Now, we are in a country where there may be barriers here and there, but I don't like to think of them as barriers all the time. I like to say that is old stuff that still needs to be broken up. There's still old policies in place, there's still old thinking in place, There's still a lot of that in place, right? But you cannot let that stuff stop you from progressing. One thing I try to tell people is that what has motivated me to continue to learn and gain the skills I gained was because of my ancestors, just like anyone else. Just like it could be Swedish or any other English settlers. They speak on their ancestors and the stuff that they passed down. Whether it's Italians or Mexicans or Asians from different cultures of Asian culture. It could be Japanese or Cambodians. They all have things they pass down generationally to each other, whether it's skill, education, leadership, or power. Some people want to believe what the roles of women are. I'm not a person that's religious or take certain religious text as truth or facts because you have to think, you have to be a thinker, and you can only be that, and you can only challenge those type of people when you have education, you have skills, and you're showing that in the leadership that you're either influencing someone with or just in your own space, maybe your own field, in your own home. It's perfectly okay for you to be a leader in your home, the same as your husband. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that should just be left up to your husband. That's old thinking, and it's usually coming from people who just stop. They stop wanting to learn, and they start to get upset. So this is just to help you to think differently, so that even women cannot lead you astray. Because there's women out here in our community as well who, may pretend they have these qualities. They may try to compete for qualities with a man, but they're not competing in these areas. And we're doing well against other women of other racial backgrounds in the US. I'm not going to speak for other countries because our economies and things are a little bit different than them. But I would say in the US, we are doing well when we're talking about competing. So if any person brings up competition, just know, we are doing well in that area and we can do better, right? So let's go on to the next slide. Now, education matters, right? So we have to break the narrative. Um, so by 2031, 60% of jobs will require education beyond high school. Women with bachelor degrees earn $25,000 more a year than women with just a high school diploma. Now, I will say this, it really depends, ladies, on your pursuit. It depends on your pursuit because if you go and get into a trade, or you're saying, hey, maybe there's a way I can get in with certifications to a higher level position and maybe something that I have to think more about. High school doesn't have to be your all and be all. I usually try to tell young people, if you're considering high school, considering college, you need to understand things economically. A lot of our parents do not teach us about financial literacy, right? Saving money and why that's important. If some of us got allowance, like I used to get allowance growing up, and I forgot what age, but it was starting to click a little bit, when I understood I didn't just want to buy candy anymore. I was into shoes and clothes. But even then, not understanding why, or my parents um, using that money and saying, well, you got to pay rent, showing me how. So, that needs to go on. And I think high school students need to take finances seriously, especially in this country, so that it can help be a preventative measure from becoming homeless. If you're focused on paying your rent and keeping your lights on, then a higher education may be important, or a pursuit of a certification or a certain trade. It's important because those areas will help you to keep your bills paid, right? And then you have to make the decision. Some is going to be sacrificed. My girls just hit me up. They said, hey, let's go out this weekend, but I got a test coming up. Am I going to allow these my friends to influence me enough to forget studying and go out with them? Or am I going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to study. We can celebrate after I pass an exam or whatever. That's the mindset you want to have. Nothing should keep you away from your money, not even a relationship, right? Not in this economy and not in these times. So here's the truth. Black women are already the most enrolled group in the US in higher education. So your education is really your launch pad. Again, do not let people who aren't in pursuit of a higher level of education downplay you or talk about it and say, you need to be with your man. And if they're not investing in that education, meaning they don't have the money or the funds to say, well, I'm going to pay for you to go to university because I believe you doing that would help benefit our children. If you become a lawyer, that skill, that mindset of teaching how to read law can be passed down. If you go to become an electrician or a cybersecurity engineer, those skill sets can be passed down to your children. That would blow your family up. Make sure your kids know stuff ahead. They know stuff ahead of time of other kids. Their education, would show that, and you see that in some kids and some families. So you don't want to hear it from a person who doesn't understand that dynamic of a family of doctors, for example. That's an awesome thing to know that, man, my mama's a lawyer, my dad's a doctor, and my brother is now pursuing becoming a psychologist, for example. Or you have another sister and she's pursuing healthcare. So those are important things to not only affect the income of that household, but it affected generationally, because now your daughters and sons would be passing that down to their students. And the cool thing about that, the little thing that's in there, is the discipline. You discipline, you took out student loans, or you're paying out of pocket, or you're working, whatever you're doing. You don't put that stuff in jeopardy or in vain because someone has an opinion. You go ahead and you continue to pursue. This is what this country has been about. So your education is definitely your launch pad. That's the first thing. So I'm giving you this knowledge so you don't even have to think about uh, doing an OnlyFans. I know some people have an idea about that, but I'm just gonna speak on it. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be nobody's sex worker. You don't even have to think like, oh, I'm gonna go back to that. Once you obtain the education and the skill, um, your mind should not even be computing backwards. Your mind would be like, what are we even doing back here? Your mind should never become desperate anymore, because again, that skill is very important, because it can't be erased, and you can go out and do your own thing. And there's many countries and stuff who would appreciate you coming there, helping them as well. Okay, so knowledge lets you think differently, solve problems, and lead. Very important. When you even looking at leadership, when I look to work for a job, and I'm looking at managers, I do look at that. I want to know, will my manager back me up? Does my manager have the knowledge that I can come to them and they're going to teach me? And I say this in a way that when you work, get yourself in the mindset of an apprentice. Even though you're getting paid, get your mindset in that place so that you would know, hey, manager, am I learning something from you? Can I take away something if I end up leaving this job? Or hopefully you never get fired, but you just end up leaving. But can I take that and go on and do better things in my life? And that's kind of how you want to even see uh, knowledge, when you're working with other people, mentors and stuff like that. Like, that's the stuff you're looking for. How can I solve problems? Once you start learning this knowledge, do not degrade yourself, do not belittle yourself for people who are clearly maybe ignorant, of things. You do not downplay the education and the things that you learned for them. It just, your brain should not even allow it. I'm going to tell you now, my brain doesn't allow it. It just won't, because I've done so much. It just won't allow someone to just be telling me anything, and I don't know how to properly go and research stuff. You know, um, First, in higher education, We're the fastest growing in higher education, so that's important. You're going to see some of these things repeated because it needs to be ingrained in your mind of your possibilities. And this is not new to Black women, young ladies. This is not new to us. Centuries and eons, we've already been doing things like this. So, it's only a mask or a deterrent to tell you that you are only fit for a role. Some women are fit for those roles, right? Housewives or any of that stuff. And even if you're a housewife, you still can go out and pursue these things. But I'm just saying, like, it's not a role based life. That's just something someone came up with a concept because they need to control something. But if we are working together, that's how kingdoms lasted for so long. And the USA is trying to stabilize that. But that I'm just saying that's how kingdoms be way before the US was even a thought. Um, lasted for so long. Okay, home ownership is important. A lot of single women, and this is important too. Because I hear a lot of banter about single parents and single moms and you being single and lonely and all this other stuff. This is why I'm telling you, pursue higher education. Get into business creation, gaining a skill through your job that can transfer down to your kids. Those things are important because it's better to cry in your home, right? It's better to be lonely in your own home. It's better to be lonely in your nice car, whatever you define as a nice car, right? It's better to be lonely knowing you're getting 10K plus a month from your work, your skills, your education. It's what because you can invest. You can invest into other nonprofits. You can invest into other young Black people, young Black kids, excuse me, their education or whatever the community has around you. That those things are important. So you can find things to make yourself happy, but this is important because it shows that Black women are out here, and I hopefully you inspired by this. But we're out here doing things that was told to be for men. And our situation is a little bit more unique than other women. No matter what they're going to say, it really is. It's just very unique. So that's why I'm just going to be continuing to promote or empower young women and just women in general to continue to pursue no matter what's happening. There's people who came through harder times and harsher times, and they still pursued it, and that has to be empowering for you. It has to be something to uplift you to know that things are gonna probably hurt your feelings. Things are probably going to make you feel like you want to give up, but you have to find that willpower in you, which we all have. You find it and you keep going. You keep going. You get up and you keep pushing. Okay. Now, we talked about why education matters, you know, um, because it definitely impacts these three areas. Future job market, if it comes down to jobs, some of those jobs are going to be looking, depending on the type of job, I'll say, it's going to be looking at if you have a high school education, right? Some are going to be looking at the college degree you have. Some will be interested in the certifications. There's some people that speaks about, oh, well, the job says I don't have enough experience, so how can I get a job? Blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, you can get experience. You just have to know how to go get that experience, right? So when you understand those things, you can participate better in the US economy, in the progress of the US. I need you to think higher. I need you to think of the ultimate vision. And this will help also deter people who are trying to knock down your pursuits, right? Because it's a bigger picture. And women, we can't be lost into just gossip all day. We got to understand these things because they affect us, right? Abortion affects you. Who's going to tell you what to do with your body? Those things are affecting you, right? So you need to have the knowledge to pursue those things. When it comes to women's rights and trans rights, again, I'm not speaking on trans women or trans people. to knock their lifestyle, their choice of lifestyle, because I don't care about that. I don't feel offended by that at all. But when it comes to the rights of women, natural born women, and some trans women may have been influenced to feel like they're women when a trans should be in front of that, in my opinion. But trans women want to be recognized as women and take advantage of some of the rights that women worked hard for. Now, this is, again, nothing against them wanting better protection, but, if you were educated enough, you can understand, well, you have civil rights. Everyone has civil rights. Everyone has basic protection. Someone can't just come and threaten you with a gun. They can't threaten another man with a gun. So what would make you better than that? Stalking, all that stuff. Everybody has the same ability to use the law to help stop someone engaging in criminal activity. So to me, I have to think about my safety as a woman, right? It's nothing against trans women, but maybe I understand why some men may take advantage. And we've seen that where it's just an entryway to do that because a lot of us young ladies we watch crime and all that. So my understanding is a criminal is not someone to be patting on the back, not to someone to be saying, oh well, this person just going through something. Like, it's not, because their intentions are never to think of the victim like that. So when you're thinking of standing up for someone, you can do that. At the same time, you need to be knowledgeable to protect yourself and your rights that you or other women like you have fought for, right? So it's nothing about trans women. It's about men taking advantage of a law that would put other women, in danger. So we have to think critically, and this is why education is important, because it doesn't allow someone who is just an emotional person come and try to impact you with emotion and these emotional morals. And as a woman, they want to play on that, right? They think you're so emotional, but you have to show them, like, yeah, I can show my emotions. I can cry or feel angry or whatever, but based on my education and how I learned to research or whatever, or my job may have given me the skills to solve problems. I think like that now. So that's what I mean. Don't belittle or demean yourself when you're learning, and it matters. That stuff matters. So people don't try to play on your emotions, but they play, but you can defend it by having your education. Now, let's look at some smart pathways. I remember some young interns at one of my positions when I was working in cybersecurity, and I had to let the young man know that he needs to consider the finances. If your parents don't have all this money, they don't have money to pay for a college. That tuition is continuing to rise, meaning some kids are paying 5, 10. It doesn't even matter what you're going to school for. Everyone is paying that same tuition, right? Or the minimum tuition just to get in. And then depending on the classes you get, that's where the money can kind of change, right? But there's smart ways to get to college. Now, I did go to college for about 3 years, I can say. But then I dropped out, but I never stopped wanting to learn because how my brain thinks, it's analytical. I like to tinker. Since I was a little girl, I used to try to build stuff with me and my siblings. We would try to build houses, little kid houses, um, cars out of little motors and batteries. So I was already doing that stuff. And then in high school, I had a program that I went to, and I was already learning like civil engineering, or I wanted to say it was civil engineering, where I had to be taught CAD, how to design something. I've been offered to go to schools that provided a different level of education, and sometimes you get on the list of those schools. So that shows you're a child that has a mind that thinks differently already. School for me wasn't super hard, but there were times I had down times. Even in college, I had down times, but it didn't stop me from wanting to pursue something better. So let's look at this, the smart pathways. College is just one path, right? It can open doors to law, medicine, STEM, and finance. Those are very, very important areas to pursue. So when you go to college, now, if you want to go into the arts, please continue. Again, do not let anyone tear you down who doesn't even pursue higher education, who thinks, oh, I'm making X amount of money and I'm doing great. But it's like, yeah, I have a certification and I'm making just the same. So it doesn't disprove that college does not give an advantage to someone, or someone pursuing a certification in a field that still requires you to use a lot of brain work. It still does not dispel that you still can make just as amount of money as them. Like you literally can. Or again, me being in cybersecurity, I didn't pursue college for it because I think financially it doesn't make sense when I can go to a boot camp, I get some skills, and that job will hire me because they know that, hey, she at least knew how to build a computer, right? So that is the skill already that I can take to that new job. So those are great fields, and those are the fields that you should be looking at, and why you should take your high school serious, your junior high serious when it comes to science and math, reading. Those are very, very important areas that you want to stay focused in and get good grades in. And then when you decide to go to college, if that's what you want to do, these are just some suggested areas: law, medicine, STEM, and finance to pursue so that you can make a good income, get good benefits. And again, these are areas that have skills that you can transfer down to your children should you decide to have children one day, right? Skills you can create your own business with should you decide to go ahead and pursue entrepreneurship. Skills that you can go when you if you want to move to another country with, because you have that already, right? But it comes with a price tag. And that's the thing. Tuition has been going up for years. Years and years and years, tuition has been rising, right? But if you go that route, aim for scholarships, grants, and programs that covers the cost. So that is what you want to pursue. If you work a job in a trade, some have apprenticeships where you can work and earn. Those are perfect jobs. Even when I'm pursuing a job, I ask how, what do they think about education? Do the job provide some type of tuition reimbursement, or are they going to invest in me by paying for more educational classes? And when that happens, when a company is investing in your education, meaning courses, or they pay thousands of dollars for you to go take a course, that's very important. That means they're investing in your education. So again, someone saying it doesn't matter, education doesn't matter, your degrees don't matter. If a company is investing into you, these people have never worked in a corporate job before. They don't even know how things are ran. They're just talking based on shared experiences or bitterness of not getting something. But this is just the natural truth, regardless of who you are. This is just what's happening in the greater society. Now, trades are another path. Electricians, plumbers, coders, project managers. You can make $80 to $150,000 a year with less debt and faster entry into the workforce. So, you hear people pushing trades. You're going to get people who are like, oh, well, trades are hot now, or blah, blah, blah. Well, if you never got the information before, just like when they said school was the hottest thing during a certain era because industries or companies were also hiring for those things. That's what I'm saying. Your education matters because it has to make critical sense. Your thinking has to make sense of someone's issue with education or your pursuit. There's people who may be upset that, oh, well, they're putting trades and there's no jobs, or there's women in jobs. Like, you cannot listen to that stuff. Don't let that stuff deter you from wanting to gain it on your own. This is not about anyone else's satisfaction. If what you're doing still helps contribute to the greater cause, the greater society, that's why you're there. And you're there to make money so you can fare better in this economy. Okay, so that's why you're pursuing these things. It's not for the benefit of people's emotions. If again, if you decide to have kids or if you are a single parent, you need to find a way to put aside 1 to 2 hours at minimum so you can pursue higher salary. Do not fall back on sex work. You ain't got to fall back on making plates or any of that stuff. Doing hair, if that's not something you want to do all your life, and then think about the effects of your body over time as well. So this is why it's important to understand the financial aspect in this day and age. Back then, your parents was doing all of that, right? Your parents, especially if you didn't learn financial literacy or anything, your parents did all that stuff. They worried about they helped be your um, uh, gosh, I forgot the name. Sorry if it's skipping my mind. But when you sign a student loan, your permissioner note, they're just someone who's on there. But that doesn't mean they take up the loan, right? It's still tied to you. So this is the key. Be intentional, ladies. You gotta be intentional, young ladies. Be intentional about going into law. Be intentional about medicine or STEM and finance. Be intentional about becoming an electrician or a plumber. Be intentional, okay? Don't follow trends blindly. Build a plan that pays off. So, if people are pursuing these other trades or anything like that, don't follow it as a trend. Follow it because you're like, yo, I didn't even know. I had no idea. There's men in these fields who want women and they respect women enough and they know how you approach learning compared to other men. And it's no shade. It's just they know these things. So think of some of you have dads who just wanted you to be successful, who taught you how to change a tire, right? Who taught you how to put your first radio in your car. And I'm just speaking of myself, but there's other women. I remember a high school teacher said her dad taught her that stuff. So it's important. Men are teaching their daughters some of this stuff. Men who don't teach their daughters, they're not giving you a way to pursue happiness. It's no in today's world, it's no reason to want to be a housewife and be taken care of and you don't have a business. You know what I'm saying? You don't have something that can sustain you and your children in case anybody has issues start, in the relationship. And the relationship doesn't have to go bad. It's just maybe you fell out of love, so that happens. You fell out of love and you're like, hey, I want to go pursue my own thing or just, get out of the relationship. So this is what you're doing. But this, is really about you being intentional with your life and not letting people take you away from what's important to the greater society and the economy. Okay, so these things are very, very important. Now, future-proof careers. Now, in my last videos, I did talk a little bit to some women who may not be in college, they may already be working out there, but this is still the same for you. These are careers that you can take a look into that would need brain power. This is very important. Your brain is very important because everything that's been invented, every tool from the hammer to the nail, all of these things took brain power, problem solving, and skills, not just physical strength. So people telling you physical strength is the only thing that matters or makes you above anyone, that just doesn't make sense. There's women who are just stronger than other women. There's women who are stronger than some men. There are men who are stronger than other men, right? But that means this doesn't really matter. Same here. These matter depending on what you're trying to pursue because your engineers, your architects, your CEOs, all of these people are worried about doing the finance part or the law of your company so it doesn't get in trouble, right? The HR, so it make sure it hires properly based on skill set or problem solving in the interview. That's important. So these career choices, and again, you want to also look at the projection, in the next 5 and 10 years, where are we heading? They could stop, right? It could be a halt at some point, but when you're researching and you see words like shortage, a need, That's how you know, man, I can go pursue that. When I looked into electrical engineering, and again, I'm someone who's able to dabble in a lot of different stuff. It's not a lot of us out here, but I am. I'm able to just teach myself how to become a cyber engineer, and then I can go into become an electrician, because sometimes what I've learned over here would be similar. Again, I work in data centers, um, networking, power. These things are also a part of this particular field, where it wouldn't be as hard to get into another field that may require a little bit of this, but this is still going to be applied. Healthcare is always going to be, up there. Renewable energy, construction, project management, AI data scientists. These are important sectors that you can look into, and pursue them. Again, be intentional, because the money would help you invest. It helps you get that home, that car, invest into the stock market, investing in other American companies, right? That you get a dividend from, or you can cash out when times get hard, and you don't have to jump into your 401ks. You don't have to jump into all that stuff, because you're like, yo, I make this amount. I have a good sense of financial literacy, intelligence, that I may only need to spend $60,000 a year out of this 180K, and survive off of that for the next few years, and use the additional money and invest that, and you can retire earlier than anyone else. And just be like, hey, I'm in this field. I'm going to take 5 to 10 years in this field, so that I can become a master. That's the goal, become a master, and you'll be fine. That's how you want to see your skills. You want to be the master at the end of the day. And there's many masters, so don't think, hey, I got to be the only master in my group or whatever. There's many masters, right? Because there's going to be other young ladies like yourself, once you get older, who wants to seek out, or should be seeking out, a master. So now you can provide an apprenticeship, in these sections, in these areas. So that's how you got to think, ladies. These jobs just don't pay well, they change lives. They're the fields that build cities and communities. And that's important. They are the fields that build cities and communities. This is not, uh, you know, based on you being a man. It's not like that. It's not like that anymore. So anyone saying that, you know, uh, I really hope they get some help. That's all I'm going to say. Now, we just have a few more here. Now, let's talk about entrepreneurship and business leadership. You don't have to just get a job, you can own, right? Black women are already the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America, but the challenge is moving into higher revenue industries. Now, I have started my own cybersecurity firm, right? I have used AI tools to build out my own cyber platforms, meaning I am not dependent upon anyone else's job, because I have the skills now. I know how to engineer a solution, right? I know how to manage it as a project, to roll it out, communicate. I know what change management means. I know all these things. I know I have to work with an executive team to present it. Again, that's just the things I've learned. I'm not saying all of you are going to tap into that, but if you pursue it with intention, that you want to learn and you want to become good, learning those facets. If you want to become an entrepreneur, it's very important to learn how a manager thinks, how an executive thinks. How does your HR team thinks? How does the accounting team thinks? Because all these things matter when you're running your own company and you're consulting or helping with solutions for other people. You have that information, that skill, that knowledge. So the challenge is just moving into higher industries. And that's what I'm saying: tech startups, finance, healthcare, real estate. Again, being single women, we are dominating in real estate. You know what I'm saying? So, but we can't limit ourselves to real estate. We get that pushed a lot. And I'm here to tell you, real estate should not be just the only asset that you're obtaining. Buying a business, getting in, understanding finances to acquire a business, so you don't have to take out SBA loans all the time, or getting private loans, or again, because VC funding for a business or a startup may not be as big for us right now. but it's not saying we don't get people who want to invest in us. I'm just saying we don't get that, but it allows us to invest in each other more because we know Charlotte with the finance firm just need some funding and we're all going to invest in that company and we're going to see a return in the next 5 or 10 years, or we're going to see a return because we're not thinking anymore of like, oh, I need my money fast. We're thinking of the long term, right? And when you're in these fields, how you used to think about money based on maybe the streets or wanting something someone else has when you can get it. It's just you need to take time to learn a few things and you can go after it. And you may not even want that. I remember Mercedes, here in California, I would say in LA, Mercedes is a sign of, I guess you made it, like a Rolex for some guys, right? But me, I don't like Mercedes. I'm not into them. Maybe the McLaren, maybe the G Wagon, but I'm not into just the basic Mercedes. They're nice. I'm not saying they're bad cars. They're not me. I like sports cars, fast cars. I'm into Ferraris and Maseratis. I'm into those type of cars. So someone trying to make you feel that way, you gotta know what you want for yourself. You always have to think about the things you want for your life, not anyone else, right? So businesses that scale, no more. I'm here to make plates. A lot of Black women go straight back to the kitchen, and that's not something I want you to think about anymore. I want you to think about getting out of that kitchen and getting into some businesses so that we can continue to grow, right? More Black women who are pursuing finance and tech startups and healthcare startups is needed because it's not a plenty of it. So there's really not a marketplace where we are experiencing downturns because we have the skills and you can go to other communities that don't have it and offer it to them, right? So these businesses leaves legacies. I'm not saying a restaurant will not leave a legacy. It can. It definitely can, right? It can expand. You got franchising. Maybe someone comes in, a Black woman comes in and helps a Black woman with a restaurant and help her franchises. That's why education matters. So you can help expand the knowledge and the reach of that business so that we are having more corporate. We can pay out 60, 70, 80, 90, 100K salaries. That's something I've always wanted to do, right? So if you have that mindset, that's really what you want to pursue. You have all these companies doing the same thing, so why not you, right? Now, let's go to politics and civic power. Don't ignore politics. Policies decide who gets scholarships, who gets grants, and what jobs are created. Again, these are very important. You're not too young. Hopefully some of your schools are teaching you the basics of government because I learned at least the basics, right? I remember 9/11 happening when I was just a sophomore in high school, but that opened my mind up to want to understand politics more, over the years. Why am I voting? Am I going to allow someone to tell me my vote doesn't matter? Or am I going to be educated enough to know that, well, how does taxes going to affect our schools getting funding because we need more school buildings? We need a better playground or we need better markings around the school. Those things are important. So someone telling you voting doesn't matter, again, they're not educated enough or skilled enough, and they should not be telling you that. When it comes to your rights and your body, that matters, right? So learning politics and civic power is very important, especially local power. You don't want to lose local power. You can share it, but you don't want to lose it to some people moving in and just taking over, right? When you hear about some of the political games that people could play or civic games that people play with property and local rights and stuff, this is why it's happening under you, and you're just, and some people in our community are oblivious to it. This is literally why. They don't understand how policies do impact us from the basic stuff, your jobs, again, schools, grant money, all that stuff matters. Who you're going to support in the elections, that matters. So don't ignore it, right? Black women's votes have decided entire elections, and we have to keep that. So we cannot allow people to downplay politics when a lot of countries, politics have been here for so long, and you'll see it depending on how much you want to pursue just the knowledge in politics and civic power, excuse me. But you'll see it. You'll see it. You'll understand, hey, it does freaking matter, right? Someone telling you it should be a vote per family while being a Christian at the same time, like it's nonsense. It's nonsense, and they could never understand your point of view because your point of view has to be there. So, people who talk like that, they need to go talk to someone and stop being bitter. So, your awareness matters for your local community and then again, the greater vision of America. Leadership isn't just about careers, it's about shaping the systems around you, young ladies. Okay? Knowledge is your shield. It's your shield. For centuries, women, especially black women, were pushed out of education because knowledge equals freedom. So I need you to understand when someone is attacking your pursuit of education, it's attacking your freedom. Knowledge isn't new to this world, to humans. Knowledge, if you go and research in history, books, writings, all of this stuff was, male dominated, became male dominated, but women were still a part of these things, right? Black people were a part of these things. So when people are trying to erase that stuff, they're trying to take away some type of freedom you have because without you having the knowledge of it, becoming enlightened, having your epiphany, you would continue to go for. You would think, oh no, this makes sense, but it doesn't. Today, it's still true. Books, skills, and learning are your shield against poverty, ladies, abuse, and control. Can't nobody come in to tell, and that's what I'm saying. Do not allow a relationship, someone who wants to only pursue a relationship, become abusive verbally, psychologically. The fields that you pursue that I'm, just giving you a suggestion to pursue, your mind cannot think down of itself anymore. Your mind has to be like, yo, this makes no sense. I'm going to leave this person. I'm not going to talk to this person. I have a Second Amendment right. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to learn how to protect myself because I'm not going to let this person sit here and try to demean me because they didn't do something. And you shouldn't even be trying to pursue it with someone who's not even on your level in the first place. I'm just going to say that. Like, do not even allow this person to talk. You can tell. I don't care how nice this person looks. I'm glad I just did not care about none of that stuff. Like, it didn't matter because I knew, like, I can't have children and they struggle because one of the parents just isn't on the level to empower those kids. And that's just how I see my family. You can see your family however you want, but that's just how I see my family and my kids if I was to ever have any. So don't ever let anyone shame you for your learning, ladies. Okay? Social pressures and trends, right? Social media will try to sell you trends, looks, lifestyles, validation, but trends fade, skills stay. Education and discipline are permanent. Relationships might come later, but they cannot replace your foundation. Build your mind first. It is very important. Some parents, even uh, fathers that are in their kids' life, they understand. Put your head. That used to be a thing. Your head need to be in them books and not on them boys. That was a thing. But in today's society, you got a lot of boys who are trying to pressure you not to be in them books. Stay in them books. One of my favorite Disney movies is Beauty and the Beast. That's one of my favorite. When I grew up, I had the curtains, the bed sheets. I just love Beauty and the Beast, and I loved it because I was so inspired by Belle's library. You know, and I remember Gaston. That was something he would always. I don't say always, but he attacked Belle on. Like, why are you reading your books, or why are you? But he's this fancy guy and great looks and because you can hunt, some guys just really think that's all that matters. And I like a good, well looking man, don't get me wrong, like I like a good one, but if I know his mind doesn't match the body or any of that, then I there's nothing I can do because I know there's other men available that would have that. So they would fall into the category of being picked or pursuing a relationship with because I know my kids would far way better, right? So even when they talk about men in the home, this is important. This is very important when you're even talking about that, right? Because they cannot replace your foundation. Even if you become a single mom because unfortunately your husband passed away, you still have those skills and education to pass down to your children. Okay. Now, this is what I am trying to promote at the end of the day, or encourage, or inspire. I'll say inspire. Now, I'm not saying Black women have to live as this sovereign community within the US, right? It's just we have a community. Like the Asian community has their own thing. They have their banks, they have their CPAs, they have all of their people who went out and pursued a higher education. They have their own local economies within their community. Jewish people are very good to take away from. Mexicans, very good communities to look at how they're doing it and how they have circular economics, how that works, and then how it contributes to the greater society. That's how you kind of want to see this. You don't want to see this as, oh, you're trying to be separate. No, if they say that, be like, well, the Asian community got their thing. White people, the reason why it has to be open for them, because unfortunately, it's the historic history of, and policies. Again, when I go back to policies that affected different communities to push them back so that they can get ahead. So you got to, this is why I know some of them complain, but it has to be broken up because you're not letting people pursue life, liberty, and justice for themselves in the way that they get to do that, right? Now, is it saying all white people are like that? Hell no, because I just don't think that's the truth, right? But what I do know is that communities that are here in America that are American, we have our things going on, and then we have the greater society that's going on, and it contributes to that, right? So Black women already own over 2.7 million businesses. However, again, they need to be more higher revenue businesses. So that's the thing we need to work on in the next 5 to 10 years. We're buying homes at record rates. We're leading in college enrollment. This is a Black women led economy. And we need the next generation to lead better, smarter, and stronger, young ladies. So, this is why this presentation is here to help you decide on being intentional about what you're about to pursue, what you're about to get on, because you don't want to be on YouTube or any other streaming service that could come out and talking about you lost your job, talking about you're struggling, you're still on government assistance. Some people want to rely on that because they don't pursue higher education. They don't want to put the time in. You know what I'm saying? If you had Section 8 and that means you're saving a lot of money. You could save a lot of money and just focus on positioning yourself, with better education or a certification or a trade, so that when you do get cut off, you're like, yo, I'm chill. I'm making 30, 50, 60, 70, whatever dollars an hour. So I'm chilling. I ain't worried about that. And that's what you want to have. You want to have that power that if a job is acting up because you you started to work for them, but you're seeing like it ain't what you thought it was, you can just leave without worrying about not getting rehired because you have the skills now. You know what I'm saying? And if you need to start it for yourself, you're gonna start it for yourself. But when you're working in the corporate life and you get around people like that, you understand, hey, I ain't gotta put up with this stuff. I ain't got to. So that's what I'm saying. Let the education lead to the skills and lead it to higher pursuits. Okay. Now, here's a roadmap that I am suggesting. Please discuss it with your parents, your peers if you would like, but make sure at the end of the day, it's your intention and it's your decision. Okay. Now, pick a path. So just focus in school. If you're in high school, junior high, and you're listening to this, you need to focus. It's no problem with you liking boys and or whatever, there's no problem, but you need to focus on the school. No guy should take you away from school. There should be no reason why you need to run away from your parents' house if it's not abusive, right? But if you're doing well and you're just like, oh, they won't let me talk to this guy or blah, 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 like, girl, focus on the goal. The goal is not that. If he really wants you, he's going to be in that same school. He's going to be telling you to continue to do your schoolwork. He's going to be congratulating because you became valedictorian or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the type of young man you want to actually be with, not some random goon out here, just wanting to have sex all day, right? So focus, push for scholarships, grants, or apprenticeships. If you're in junior high or high school, you need to start to understand those areas so that you can start applying at some point, right? And be ready to apply. Pick a path with purpose, STEM, trades, or business. Learn money early. Credit, savings, investing is important. Engage civically. Understand politics. Vote and speak out. I don't care about your politics. Just get into it, right? I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent. You just need to understand it. You just need to understand it and speak out regardless. Stay focused, block out distractions, and protect your vision. That's really the model way, the core way for you to get to your goals, young ladies. Now, in closing, your worth is not tied to a relationship. I'm just repeating that. Your worth is not tied to a relationship. The society may see, they may say, hey, seeing two people together is the thing. But at the end of the day, look at that. Look at the economics. Okay, look into the local civic and political power. Look into all these things and ask yourself, where does the relationship come into play that affects that relationship? We can be together, right? There's black bachelor men who are really wealthy. They didn't have a relationship, so why does it have to be pushed on you? Get your core together, ladies. Get your minds right, young ladies. Your worth is tied to your vision, your discipline, and your ability to lead. The next generation of leaders will be women who know their value, invest in their skills, and create economies around their vision. So the young men or men who want to be in your life, they would be on this same frequency as you, the same thought process, because they're going to be in those same fields and they know you're going to work together to pursue a goal together. So when you're even thinking about a relationship, these are the type of men you want to be around. You want to pursue, or they pursue you. You want somebody you can have a conversation with that isn't about gossip all day, that isn't about stuff that doesn't matter, right? You don't want someone who's playing video games, but they're not in their garage tinkering, building something. That to me, and that's just how I see men who are pursuing. So that's just how I see it. If he's not building a video game at some point, then no, that may be that person's relaxation time, because everybody needs to relax. But when you're with somebody like that, you got to ask yourself at some point, what else are they doing? I can look at stuff and still go tinker. Some of the best minds are out there building stuff, ladies. I'm telling you that's just what it is. A lot of these men that are in these higher education or higher skill levels, they're always tinkering. Now, some areas, some men are just they won't grow as much because they're not thinking about doing that stuff. They want to just drink and chill and hang, because they had a hard day, or by the time they get 50 or 60, their bodies are about to break down. So outside of that, what are they going to be doing? Stuff around the house. And that's pretty much it, right? I'm not saying all guys, but that's what's going to happen. But older men who are using more of their brain power, their careers they seem to be longer, in my opinion, So if you're a young black woman listening, the future is yours. It's yours for the taking. In your world, there are infinite possibilities for yourself. And I'm here to let you know, lead with knowledge and you'll shape the world. The future is yours to lead, young ladies. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for attending this YouTube live again, or not live, but this YouTube presentation. You guys have a great day, and I will try to link these presentations somewhere. I know I haven't done the other two, but I will definitely try to do that. But hopefully this helped you, and you guys have a good day.